Medical workers of Reddit, what were the most haunting last words you've heard from a patient? Student sir, are you in any pain? Patient, the fuck kind of dumbest question is that? I just got fucking stabbed. Fuck yeah, I'm in pain. He died within minutes. Working caregiver, in my earlier days I overheard an old woman console her dying husband. Went like this. Damn it Jim, you have beat so many things in your life. For heaven's sake, you beat that murder charge for that guy you killed. You can beat this. She did not know I was listening. Dude died the next day. I was about 5 or 6 when my grandfather was on his deathbed. The last thing he did was put his hand on my shoulder and said, "No wonder you never liked my spicy food," and then he passed about 10 seconds later. We were all super confused. About 3 months later I almost died from suffocation after eating some salsa. At the hospital I was diagnosed with a capsaicin allergy, spicy food. To this day it still creeps me out. No one knew I was allergic before then, and I didn't show any signs either. It wasn't words, but the most haunting death was a patient who was DNR, through her and her family's wishes. She was losing her battle, and her family wasn't there. She was getting frantic and looking around and half sitting up in bed, and a nurse with more experience than me took her hand and calmly said, "It's okay. You are not alone. We're right here with you. It's okay to leave." The patient immediately calmed, put her head back on the pillow and died. I knew I wanted to be that nurse when I grew up. How the hell did she know just what to do and say? I've never forgotten it. I was visiting my grandpa and had to leave town and go back to medical school, and I told him I loved him and would see him later. He told me he loved me too, but no I won't. He was right. He died a week later of pneumonia. I'm gonna fuck you up, old man who never attended his dialysis appointments. A few hours later we had a fire right by his former room, so despite not being all that worrying at the time, he definitely was the only one that followed through on actually haunting us. My grandpa was similar, struggling to hang on but not responsive. My grandma grabbed his hand and said, "It's okay, you can go, the kids will take care of me." He was gone within the hour. He loved her so much that it wasn't a surprise that he needed her permission to die. Edit. Thank you for the silver. I didn't expect this to blow up as it did. Thank you all for sharing your stories, they were very touching. Wasn't his last words, but last words he said to me. I am an EMT, and we had a frequent patient. Almost once a week he was a huge dick, but towards the end he turned into a sweet and appreciative man. We were in his house, which what ended up being our last day there. He knew it. I didn't. He said, "Can I just have a beer before we leave for the hospital?" I didn't let him have it, I should have. When I was training I had a guy go into a massive cardiac arrest. We ended up working on him for over an hour and a half because we kept getting him back then losing him again. He had wet himself during the arrest, which is common. It happens. And he just kept apologizing for making a mess. Having surgery tomorrow. What the fuck am I doing here? Edit. You are all super kind, wonderful people, and I will almost certainly not haunt any of you if I kick the bucket tomorrow. Edit 2. Surgery went well, I am home and resting. For the record, my not final words were as follows. Anesthesiologist, we're giving you the anesthesia now, you'll be asleep in just a few seconds. Me, stoned on the don't panic drug cocktail. Okay. Sweet dreams honey. Everyone else in operating room. Ha 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 ha. So I went under to the sound of laughter. Not a bad deal at all. Again, thank you all. Hospice nurse here had a patient who was experiencing terminal agitation. With an expression of complete terror on his face he said, "Help me. They are coming to get me." I work as a PA for a clinic, so I'll never be involved in that situation, but I know a friend who has been. She is also a PA and was helping a guy who was terminally ill. Before he passed he asked her to not let his wife have his shit. Of course she listens and is sympathetic. A day or so after he passed, his ex-wife apparently shows up to the hospital with several kids saying she is in this guy's will. Long story short, she was trying to take his shit. Paramedic here. I was transporting a cardiac patient, and while we were both watching my EKG monitor, he went into fib, a lethal heart rhythm. His heart stopped pumping blood effectively at that point, but there was enough blood pressure for a few seconds of consciousness. He looked at me and said, "But I don't see the light," and went unconscious. Coded him, shocked him a few times, meds by the handful, but he died. "You tell that man to get out of here right now," she screamed while staring behind me, eyes sharp and focused on something. Me, in the middle of the night, while I was working the haunted hall, by myself. All of the heebies, and most of the GBs. I remember it from my granny. My mom and I stayed with her until the end. The sound of her breath was chilling. Strangely, it reminded me of our coffee maker. When my mom started breathing that way, no worries, she had a call and made a similar sound. I went apeshit crazy. I'm an emergency nurse. I work on the adult side, but our trauma bay is shared with peds. They have their own medical resus room, though. I do not know how you do it. I've only heard that sound a few times, but it sticks with you. Thank you for doing what you do. Nursing home. Most elderly people are at ease as they get nearer and nearer to death. But this old lady, as she deteriorated over her last week or so, would scream, "I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die." Really heartbreaking to see. I'm an intern at a home for patients with Alzheimer and have only been there for a few weeks. The first patient to pass during my internship said, "Who am I?" For some reason it saddens me deeply and I can't seem to let it go. Alzheimer patients hit me hard. I used to think it was funny that my great-grandpa couldn't remember simple things like my age and name, though he never forgot my face, or when he had ice cream last. Even if we had literally just gotten back from a drive to get ice cream. He passed when I was maybe 9, and I don't think I fully realized until years later how much it was actually deteriorating him. Thank you from a little old man with stage 4 lung cancer. He had no family, so I stayed after my shift ended. He just didn't want to die alone and I refused to let it happen. Dunno why, but it still makes me cry when I think of it. Not haunting, but it went. So this is what retirement is like. He got hit by a car within a few days of retirement and it has to be the funniest last words. Normally they are sad last words. Edit. Thanks for the silver and wow, didn't expect this to blow up like this. My father will never enjoy retirement. He has terminal cancer, was given 3-5 years 4 years ago and reaches retirement next year. It makes me so very sad. More than half the people at his work that worked in a specific room in a specific building on the military base have died or are dying of cancer. Worked in a vault in a cement block, could withstand nuclear blasts, on a military base as a civilian. We used to camp with a guy who knew exactly how many years, months, weeks, and days he had left until retirement. He'd mention it most times we camped. 4 years this went on until he finally retired. He was ecstatic. Finally free. He died less than a year later. That's really stuck with me. I try to enjoy every day like it's a precious gift because I have no idea if I'll live to enjoy my golden years. Edit. Typo. IV drug user with multiple vegetations on 3/4 of his heart valves that were being thrown into his lungs and causing strokes. Improving over several days with antibiotics and supportive treatment, strength returning, able to verbalize more, mentating better altogether. Told him he was getting better and that we're going in the right direction. Tells me I trust you 100%. Sudden hemorrhage in his brain hours later and pronounced brain dead. My mother-in-law's last words to me are recorded. She said she loves me. She was very ill with a degenerative lung disease. Her lungs were slowly filling up with scar tissue and less, and so she was taking in less and less oxygen. It took her everything to say her true final words, which were to my wife, her only child. She said, "I could have had 12 daughters and I still wouldn't have been taken care the way you took care of me. I love you." She shut her eyes and died the next day. Edit. This isn't haunting, I just had nothing else to contribute. My dad died this month from an infection after heart surgery because of Agent Orange exposure in Vietnam. He asked when did he get old? Son, I'm sorry, and passed away. It tears me up that his last thoughts were to apologize for dying. He had nothing to apologize for, he was more than I deserved. Not in the medical field, but it may fit. My mother fought leukemia for over a year, was doing incredibly well, then it mutated a third time. She got released on hospice and was barely conscious. I got ready to go home for the night and I told her I love you. You did a great job and she said thank you, I love you too. I then told her you can let go now and she said okay. She didn't make it through the night. ER nurse here. Last words I've heard, did they shoot my dick off? Dude was shot multiple times by the police, but not in the dick. I need to take a shit. Heard this more than once while assessing a stroke patient. He asked me to pull his finger, a fart joke. Laughed then went into cardiac arrest. Please, don't let me die. This one haunts me. I love you, Joe. The last words my mother said to me. My great grandma was very religious. She actually wanted to become a nun but never followed through. She died quite suddenly, heart attack, and was normal and cheery until then. But the day before she died she said, you know, tomorrow is Ascension, or in German Morgenist Himmelfahrt. We thought she meant the Catholic holiday and said no gran, it's November. Christ Ascension is in May, but she insisted, I know it's November dummy, but tomorrow is Ascension. She died the next day. I don't believe in God or anything, but who knows, maybe she did ascend. Worked a patient in a private home. Regular emergency call, neighbor found older person unresponsive. We get there, person is unconscious, barely breathing, arrests like 5 seconds. After we get there we push meds and defib him twice, get him back, his eyes shoot open and through his oxygen mask. Just as I'm asking him his name to ascertain his alertness, he shouts, behind you, then goes flatline. There was no one behind me. I have no idea what he saw there. He did not recover. Not haunting but a bit odd. Dad was a nurse for a few years. Had an older man patient he always would be with. Dude told him out of nowhere, this sucks, and I'm ready to go, but not till after the sports team wins tonight. Sure enough, team won. He passed minutes later. We still wonder if he would have held on for the next game had they lost. Not medical worker. My mill called my so, but I picked it because he was sleeping and had only slept 4 hours. I told her I would wake him up, but she insisted I let him sleep and asks if, when he wakes up, we could buy some stuff for her before heading to the hospital. Later we learned that it was the last call she made before going into full sedation. I think she was trying to let us rest and distracted us so we could have some more time of happiness. She sounded so cheery I did not see it coming. I wish I did so I could have waked him up.